Without any further delay, let's get back. Peter, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And again, all your work and efforts. And Bill, I left you on hold. I hope you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still there.
so many things to cover. Peter, what I did want to ask, if it's okay, of course, we get a lot of, we've had you on before, and a lot of new listeners to the show.
Sure.
Could you give a little synopsis about the incident over in the UK with this craft, the whole incident that took place?
Sure.
Could you give a little bit about it, a little background about it for people that don't know about it? What it's about.
Glad to. It is known as the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident, although some have called it the Bentwaters incident as well, taking the name of the then United States Air Base, RAF Bentwaters, which was decommissioned in 1992, I believe. In any event, the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident is actually a series of events that occurred in and around the Rendlesham Forest, in which RAF Bentwaters and its sister base, which was and remains an RAF British military base, RAF Woodbridge, are located in Suffolk, UK. The events in question happened over 3 consecutive nights in December 1980, right between Christmas and New Year's. On the first night, UFOs, unidentified, truly anomalous unidentified UFOs, were seen coming in over the RAF Bentwaters weapons storage area. And again, on the third night, and that would have been nuclear weapons storage area. The craft themselves were observed from a 40-foot observation tower right there within the weapons storage area. They were also observed from the main gate of RAF Woodbridge by then Airman John Burroughs, who was a security police officer, and who radioed in that he observed a light go down in the forest. It didn't seem to be a crash because there was no explosion, fire, concussion, or blast. But this was at a very sensitive point in the Cold War, and it's a very militarized part of England. If you're on duty, you're not going to not report seeing something like that happen. Within a short period of time, another airman, Ed Cabanasac, arrived with Sergeant Jim Pennison of the security police. Larry Warren was also a member of the security police, my co-author. And the two were driven into the area, Pennison and Burroughs, by Cabanasac, where there is no question in the minds of those of us that study such things that they encountered a machine of undetermined origin, which they have different and specific memories about, some shared and some very individual. It's been the subject of ever so many television treatments that probably a lot of your listeners who are aware of the case are aware that Jim Pennison alleges that when he touched a symbol, one of a number of them on this craft, that a binary code of information, a message from the intelligences behind the event downloaded into his head. He maintains that it was time travelers from another time, obviously, well, not obviously, and that they chose him to give him this message. I question that, but that is one of the allegations for the first night. Other things were observed on the second night. On the third night, probably one of the better known incidents happened, which was Charles Halt, the deputy base commander, observing one of these unknowns pass over him. And 5 or 6 other personnel, as I recall the number, all of them known and all of them named, who were with him in a certain part of the Rendlesham Forest on the third night. And then later that evening, in a farmer's field, not more than probably half a mile from that event, another event happened, which I think is the most significant of the 3 nights, and that is the one that was witnessed by and involved my co-author, the appearance of a fully articulated craft and several beings from it. Following in quick succession, men who were involved as eyewitnesses, all of the key ones and others that are lesser known, were put through whatever you want to call it. I would call it Disneyland on acid, a really horrific debriefing process. Certain things put in their heads, other things abused if possible, and so certain fragmented memories came out of that for some of the men, but over the decades since, a good number of them seem to have been sorted out and attested to. Again, that is the most bare-bones version of the events in question. They were immediately covered up very effectively by Her Majesty's government and the United States Air Force, and until Larry Warren really blew the whistle on it and made that very lonely decision to buck the system and get that truth out there rather than follow the military protocols that he was supposed to follow. That story was very well hushed up until October of 1983, when the information that Larry Warren gave the initial researcher that he worked with back in 82 and 83, that story exploded in the British press that autumn and has continued to unfold since then.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I actually want to follow up with a quick question, Pat.
Yeah.
Peter actually went back to Farmer's Field with Larry, and he's seen the discolored spot where the craft allegedly had been in that vicinity. And Peter, were there tests done on the soil samples on the areas that seemed undisturbed and that of the area that was discolored? And what were the results of those tests?
Yeah, extensive tests. I think that they form the basis of certainly some of, if not the very best physical evidence in support of the third night in specific and the Rendlesham Forest incident in general. What Larry and I observed when we first went out there, and this goes back years, in February of 88, was a discoloration in the soil. In the winter, a tilled field, empty. I went back about a year and a half later, and that it was June of 1990 by then, and 9.5 years after the event, and on that precise spot that you could identify in the field as different from the field around it, it was now a large green oval in a field of hay where everything else was yellow. Initial samples were drawn, and then a year or so later I returned with approved laboratory containers from the place that was going to do the soil analysis, collected it in the manner that I had been instructed to from the area, which did prove to be very different than the surrounding areas, and the edge of that area, and then control samples, random control samples from further out in the field to verify the initial data. I don't have that report in front of me, but it is published in the updated edition of Left at Eastgate and in great detail in Halton Woodbridge. You have the affected soil sample that has more than 4 times the amount of tiny metallic particles found naturally in the soil in that particular part of Suffolk, UK, which suggested to our soil analysts only that a very powerful electromagnetic effect had taken place on that spot. We also had the phenomena of seed germination tests that were conducted on the affected soil compared to the control samples. Control samples, absolutely normal gestation time. Affected samples took much longer to mature, and only mutant strains. That was our lab technician's term for it. Matthew Moniz is his name. He's a real person. But only mutant strains of the plants grew in the affected sample. We also had, how can I say, well, the most dramatic result was that this all occurred at a spot 4 or 5 miles from the sea, and it would be natural to expect a realistic component of the farm field soil to contain sand, which it does, and that is verified in the control samples. There is no sand in the affected sample. It has been reduced to glass, an interim form of glass that is melted. And that was something that even in the laboratory they were unable to make happen. For that reason, and superimposing other facts, established facts, on that physical evidence, we have a wonderful profile of a very real event within a series of real events that is as physical as it could possibly be.
Wow. I just want to say thank you, Peter, for all the work that you do, and I wish you the best in all your future endeavors. And I was just looking into the Travis showing at the theater.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, for those that are listening, if you live in the New York tri-state area, it's going to be starting at 6 p.m., and it will be hosted by the Village East Cinema, and it's located on 2nd Avenue between 11th and 12th Street on the east side of Manhattan. So I'm going to try my best to get there. And the ticket is just like the normal ticket of a theater ticket that you would go to see a movie. So, Peter, again, Pat, again, thank you so much for having, the opportunity to speak to both of you. And I wish you both a Happy New Year.
Sounds good, Bill.
Most welcome, and thank you for your great questions.
Yeah. Take care, Bill.
I'll talk to you.
Thank
All
you,
right,
as
you
always.
guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Okay.
Good
You
night.
too.
Bye.
Well, this whole case is just super interesting, Peter. I mean, there's so much tied to it. With
Yeah.
Larry, with Larry, well, obviously you work with. They let you. I mean, you work with him for so long. All this stuff when he touched this thing, is his recollection. Does he remember to this day, as far as all these numbers and stuff that he
Well,
picked up, or?
again, one of the reasons the case seems so complex is we have different individuals having different experiences on different nights. I think you're referring to Jim Peniston's experience
Yes,
on
I'm
the
sorry.
first
You're
night.
right. You're right, Jim.
And Jim has only ever said so much in public about it. He wrote about it last year in his and John Burroughs and Nick Pope's book, Encounter in Rendlesham Forest. And beyond that, I just can't comment on his experience. We see it from very different angles. I genuinely feel, after studying everything available to me, that it's Jim's recollection that is the one that has been tricked up, and not by time travelers, but by aspects of the intelligence community to make him believe and feel and think that he was contacted by time travelers from another time. Again, who am I to say what it is or isn't? None of us know definitively.
Right.
But I encourage people to read Halt and Woodbridge and sort that out for themselves. I write about it more extensively in a previous book called Deliberate Deception, which can be downloaded at no cost on the Internet.
Now, where can our listeners get your books at? Where can they get the new book at?
Halt and Woodbridge is available as a regular book and as a Kindle edition from Amazon Books.
Okay.
Just go there, order it like a normal book. It's $15 as a book. I'm glad to say that we were able to bring it out at $3.99 as a Kindle edition, and I really do encourage people to read it. I think I'm the least objective person, obviously, but I think it is a really compelling case and kind of meditation on what some people will do and possible reasons they may do it to discredit or take attention away or belittle an important and embarrassing personage in terms of what they put forward and the impact they've had on the cover-up. And that's the way the system works. I think Larry Warren is a true American hero, and I think the second book was warranted to follow up on Left at Eastgate. For what it's worth, since Halt and Woodbridge came out, I have not heard a peep of protest to anything that it alleges, and I haven't heard anybody out there defending the things that Mr. Halt has said that compelled me to write the book.
So this new book kind of just addresses a lot of the open issues, if you will.
Well, what it does is focus in on the question of why would somebody come back at another individual for more than 30 years saying things about them that were demonstrably untrue, to discredit them and to take attention away from a really important testimony in a very significant and well-documented military UFO incident. It sets that story within the framework of an event that happened last summer when the deputy base commander's behavior, with all due respect, in my opinion, was just absolutely outrageous and over the top about this. Amazon.com is also where you can find Left at Eastgate, the British bestseller that I will always be proud of having written with whistleblower and eyewitness Larry Warren. And there is one other book that you can download at no cost that I wrote last year called Deliberate Deception. And that is available by going to the website of Phenomena Magazine. They're a terrific monthly magazine that comes out of Manchester. It's a digital publication only, and it is absolutely free. And for any of your listeners that are following, study, or have a passion about any area of the paranormal, Phenomena Magazine is one of the best. Their terrific managing area, Steve Mira, makes that publication work. It's at least 100 pages every month. You can download it and get a subscription to it at no cost. But if you go to their website homepage and you click on the box that says Special Reports, it will take you to a cyber bookshelf. And you just download the books on that shelf, and you will have the book I wrote last year, Deliberate Deception. Again, if you have Kindle, download Halt and Woodbridge on Kindle, read it, and come to your best opinion on the matter at hand.
Interesting, very interesting. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about Travis. The movie that's going to be shown in New York City, is this the finished copy? Is this? I guess maybe if you could talk a little bit about it. Is this kind of a new, updated documentary about Travis?
Yeah. First of all, the documentary itself was made over the past few years by a Philadelphia-based documentary filmmaker, researcher, and investigator herself, Jennifer Stein.
Right.
And the reason it came out at all before it came out, so to say, was last year. We really wanted to get an almost finished version of it into the International UFO Congress, that film festival. The event itself is part of a large annual conference that many of you listeners are familiar with. It takes place in the Phoenix area every February, sponsored by the Open Minds organization. And so we were able to get a unfinished version entered into the film festival 11 months ago, February of 2015. It was so well received that it won in its category and won the People's Choice Award. And the version that is being shown now is almost complete. The one that will be shown next week in New York City, it's about a 30% different focus of content from the one that was shown last year. And once again, it is important to know that the only reason it isn't the finished documentary is that there were still 2 interviews that we needed to get, which we got in November, just 2 months ago. And those are being integrated now. So within the next 6 weeks, 2 months, I would say, the truly final version of Travis, the true story of Travis Walton, will be available commercially as a completed feature-length DVD documentary.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You know, I had the opportunity a couple years ago to interview Steve Pierce.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, of course, lived here in Utah for a long time.
That's right.
In Provo, and I believe he's in Maine or Massachusetts. I don't know. It's been
He was. Now he is married and living in Texas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll have to. Every now and then I'll get an email from him. I'll have to follow. I'll have to file back up with that. But when I talked to Steve last time, there was when he was on the radio show, he had a new book in the works, and he couldn't say a lot, but he did allude and mention on many occasions throughout the interview that he feels that, he kind of went like a lot of the guys, with the exception of Travis, kind of went into hiding. They went in, not hiding, I should say, but they avoided the media. They avoided interviews. And of course, Steve was, I think, one of the first ones to kind of come out and say he feels that something might have happened to him and maybe all of them, more so than just taking off in that truck that night.
Yeah.
Does the new documentary address any of the other people that were there?
Steve is definitely included in it, as is John Olette, who was also a witness that night, as is Mike Rogers. Mike, who was the crew chief, and at the time Travis's best friend, are included in the documentary. But it's specifically focused around Travis's experiences, and I would guess that if there is more to it, it's not something that I've explored, but if other of the men who were involved were taken, then that is dramatic new information and not something that I have much awareness with. I've certainly spoken with Steve, and we've corresponded back and forth occasionally, but that would be new information for me, and I hope that he does publish a book. There's no question that the impact on the lives of the men and the families of the men who were also involved was life-changing, as these things are naturally going to be. But yeah, always wish Steve the best, and I hope that he does have more to say on what he feels may be the case here.
Yeah, I'll need to, like I said, to get him back on, but I know with his book, and I don't know the status of it, I believe it was finished. We had him on it was a couple of years ago. I think it was back in 2013 or even 2012. I don't quite remember now, but had him on when we were doing the weeknight shows, and very interesting to talk to. And again, as he had mentioned, he just kind of went into hiding and got out of the view of, didn't. The event occurred. He was done. That's it. Walked away, but is now willing to talk about it, and I think that's good.
For some of these guys, they had no desire whatsoever to be public people on this. And the only reason Travis was, and it's worth taking a moment here to remember that he is not your normal profile of an individual that has had these experiences overwhelmingly. These are folks that allege that they've had these abduction-type experiences on and off, in many cases, throughout their lives. Travis was arguably at the wrong place at the right moment, or the right place at the wrong moment, or, depending on your point of view, the wrong place at the wrong moment. And he got hit. But the thing that made the Travis Walton event so important and so instantly well-known worldwide was, I mean, think about it. If a logger went missing in rural Arizona or Utah or Nevada, or choose your favorite state, do you think it would really get out of the local or maybe regional news cycle? The chances are excellent that it wouldn't. The reason that in this case it did was that a man goes missing, and the men with him allege that he was taken by a disc-shaped UFO. Law enforcement thinks that maybe, just maybe, there's a better chance that there was some kind of altercation, a tragedy, a misunderstanding, somebody did something, and the next thing they know, somebody's dead and a body's being hidden, and they're making up an outrageous story about what really happened. That story went out on the wire services, and that story went right to Europe as well as all over the States. And so when Travis Walton was returned 5 days later, shocked, dehydrated, with flashes of very dramatic memories, in a state of profound upset, it was already an international news story. And he walked right back into it in his hometown of Little Snowflake, Arizona, like a buzzsaw, but managed to make his way through the overwhelming assault, the prurient interest, the kind of freakish way that he was regarded, the outsider status that he had to live with, and has gone on to become, I think, one of the most eloquent, thoughtful, observant spokespeople we have for this truly paranormal type event, UFO abduction. I think that another thing that really excites me about the final version of the documentary, which will be out soon, again, it's called Travis, the true story of Travis Walton, is that it's not just a great UFO documentary, it's a great documentary. And I think has the chance of, like a good Ken Burns documentary on a subject that might not interest you, of garnering a much wider audience because it's a great documentary. And I'm reminded of Ken Burns, who, for the three people out there that don't know that name, he's probably our greatest and most revered documentary filmmaker right now here in the States. His series on baseball and the Civil War and New York are legendary, but whether or not one of his documentary titles interests you, if you watch it, you learn more about the wider subject, the times it happened in individuals whose life touched up against it, etc. So I'm really optimistic that this title has a chance of reaching a wider general audience and giving them permission in their minds to say, hey, I saw a great documentary, you might want to see it. I thought this subject was nuts, but no, this made a convincing case for it. I am now officially interested in this subject.
Very interesting. The movie was, and Bill mentioned that, and you've mentioned this before. With the movie, was there a lot of Hollywood sensationalism compared to what really happened?
Well, to cut to the chase, the definitive story has been told very well by Tracy Torme. He's a screenwriter for it and worked directly with Travis on it. Tracy grew up in a Hollywood family, very famous father, the well-known and beloved singer Mel Torme, more of the 40s through 60s generation. But Mel had a profound UFO sighting at the height of his career, I think in the 60s, and was not quiet about it. So Tracy grew up with a real openness to the subject. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the head of the studio at the time, I forget which studio, but the man's name was Brandon Tartikoff. I first heard his name because he was at NBC as the studio head when the network was lucky enough to get the show Saturday Night Live up and running in the 70s. And ultimately, Tartikoff went on to head the studio that made the film Fire in the Sky. He had apparently seen a similar treatment of alien abduction that was done in a CBS miniseries, we theorize, based on Bud Hopkins' books, Missing Time and Intruders. And he wanted something new. And Tracy and Travis prevailed on them to the degree that they were able on the phone to say, no, this is it. This is how it happened. This is as wild as it gets. And his response in so many words was, I want something new that the audience hasn't seen, something more shocking. Do it, or this film is deep sixed. And they had a choice of agreeing to do something that was not accurate and really tarting up the onboard sequences rather than, standing on principle and putting all those people out of work. Again, for me, the film works best as a human document. Fire in the Sky has some great performances, including by the late, great James Garner, who plays the chief law enforcement official, the real person of whom is interviewed for the documentary. And, I mean, how would any of us relate to this event if these, 5 or 6 earnest young guys came in a state of high upset, reported that their buddy had been abducted by a flying saucer, and that he's gone? Even if I knew these guys from the time that they were kids, would I just simply assume, even if it's me, the actual me that knows these things happen as well as I can from having studied them for 40 years, would I naturally assume that they were telling the truth? That's a lot to ask. And if the subject was, not something I was familiar with, why would I ever even consider thinking that they were abducted? This individual was taken by other intelligences rather than something conventional, like, he got killed and buried. That kind of logic should appeal to anyone. And again, I think it's wonderfully well covered in the documentary. Also, D.B. Sweeney's performance as Travis is very affecting, as is, what's his name? The actor who became instantly world famous.
Oh, Patrick.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. John Patrick. No.
The guy who was in Terminator and
yes,
yeah.
the Liquid Metal Man
Right,
in Terminator.
Right.
Gee, we're both blanking. But he was superb as Mike Rogers, and you can really feel the pain in the performances. I still think it's worth seeing, but with a grain of salt when it comes to, the appearance of the aliens, the wild membrane, sticky stuff that Travis wakes up trapped under, and a number of other flourishes in that part of the narrative.
Exactly. Well, in the movie while it was a compelling movie, while it was interesting, it was, to me, it was more written along the lines of a horror film, and I think that's the genre that it falls under.
Yeah.
Versus a documentary or a real life account.
Yeah. Part of the problem there is, for any nonfiction writer, If you are fortunate enough, if that is the term for it, and sometimes it is, to sell the option or the rights to a film to a production company or, film business entity, no matter what guarantees you're given, you're still left hanging. You hope for the best, that they do justice to the story, or at least, respect the basic givens of it. And if not, as Tony Soprano would say, what are you going to do?
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, a lot of us would like to see that film remade, and considering so much of the crap that's remade 15 or 20 years after the fact, this is a quality story that a lot of us would like to see done in high dramatic treatment. Again, Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton, is a feature-length documentary. There is a relatively brief but great sequence with actors giving us an accurate sense of what it would have been like to have had Travis's onboard experience, and that's come in really nicely. There's also some special effects revolving around some of the physical evidence, but in great part is archival footage, commentary by different people studying the subject or coming at it from different points of view. And I feel, again, I am not the most objective person, but I feel it really is a compelling film from beginning to end.
Is it going to be available on DVD eventually?
Oh, yeah.
Peter?
Again, it is available now, but not in the finalized version. What I would suggest to any of your listeners that are interested is in a few weeks, say sometime in February, check the website for the production company, which is pronounced On Wings, like birds, On Wings, okay. But it's spelled ONWINGES, onwings.com. That will take you to the page where you can buy a copy of the final version. So check it in a few weeks, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. I'm just really knocked out with its it's almost final form now. We're still waiting for the last few minutes of excerpts from these two important interviews to be woven into it. But the version that we're going to be screening next week is very, very watchable unto itself, no question about it. It is the almost done version, and it's as good as it gets right now.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I find his case very interesting. Matter of fact, one of these days I need a favor. I know he's quite busy, but I could use a little help. I've reached out to him many times to come on the program, and he's a hard guy to get a hold of.
Bless his heart, he is, and I don't know anyone, quite simply, in this work who receives more email than he does. And I think poor Travis sometimes walks around in a state of incompletion or guilt that he can never catch up with all of the good people that write to him. He is in such a different class, and it is frustrating, but we'll see what we can do for sure. It'd be great to have him on your show.
Yeah, I would. He's definitely one of the people that I would like to I'd like to get on, because again, I respect. Oh, you back, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I thought I dumped you for a second. He's somebody that I respect, and he's just been so. I've followed him quite a bit, and I've watched a lot of his different talks, and he would be someone that awesome. Would be interesting to interview. But again, after a while, you've got to live a regular life. I mean, you can tell the story only so many times, you know.
It's true. Larry occasionally, laughingly, used to refer to himself as a mechanical monkey that would be trotted out as in some people's minds to repeat the oft-repeated story. And you think about, oh God, pop stars who have written an iconic song and are asked to sing it with heart
right
for the 1,000th time.
Right.
it endears these people to me all the more, that they have the patience, the goodwill, and also realize that it's important for them to tell the truth as they know it. For folks that have not had experiences like this, it just sounds so impossible, so wild, so hard to believe. And Travis has really summed it up. I've heard him say in more than one talk, if I were in your place, sitting in the audience, and you were up here telling me that what happened to you was the kind of thing that's happened to me, I don't know if I'd believe you either. So I have no problem if you're looking at this with a skeptical eye. He also goes out of his way in appearances to do something I rarely see, which is do his best to answer every single question that everyone in the audience has. And it has delayed programs somewhat. But he's a
down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, he is. And he's got a great deal of integrity and a lot of heart. You can't go through these kinds of things, I feel, without emerging as a more compassionate, more patient, and maybe a better person all around in some respects.
Exactly. Hey, we've got another caller. I know we got a few minutes left. You want to take another call?
Absolutely.
All right. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk. You're on with Peter Robbins.
Hello, Peter. It's your favorite
Hi.
person from Utah, next to Pat. And I'm not wearing my Halloween makeup.
Damn. Well, anyway, it's wonderful to hear your voice nonetheless.
Well, I know you can't see the makeup, and I promise I'll pay for your therapy, but that's
I've
okay.
got a great imagination.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Erica?
I'm good. We just definitely need to chat, so I've missed you, and I hope everything's good.
Well, you're almost psychic because I have a brown envelope sitting on my desk here with some CDs and other things for you that we had discussed some time back relative to my sister that will be going out to you next week.
Oh, you're such a love.
I'm hoping that our paths will cross again this year somewhere along the line.
Well, we'll just have to make sure it happens because we need to sit down and have a little chat, and I'm excited to hear your sister's music. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. I know you'll enjoy it. And, we'll connect in the next couple of days and figure out our next step in our plan for world conquest.
Oh, we can do it. I have a feeling. Even with my Halloween makeup, it'll be hot.
You might want to supply that to Pat for posting on their show's website if the webmaster feels that the site is structurally strong enough to deal with it.
Probably not, but it's on my Facebook if anybody needs that. So,
I encourage you all to run, don't walk, to see these photos.
I promise I will work on my makeup skills, and I will never call you on Skype with my Halloween makeup on again.
It was a joy.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you, and we will talk soon, I know.
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
And Eric is going to be on with us for the next couple of hours.
Excellent.
We asked her to join us tonight and give us an update on. There's been so much going on in Utah and with MUFON, and it'll be a lot of fun. It's always fun to catch up with fun people.
Excellent. All right. Well,
before you go, Peter.
Before
you go, I still got 4 minutes with you.
Uh-huh.
2 questions. We had one question, 2 that some listeners sent in, and I want to get them to you. One was, what is your thoughts about Alan Godfrey?
Oh, Alan Godfrey is a retired British police officer who was involved in not just a UFO-related incident, but an abduction-related incident right around the time of the Rendlesham Forest event, I think in November, a matter of a few weeks beforehand. I think his case is one of the most important, one of the best documented, and certainly one of the most significant involving serving law enforcement personnel. I also think he's a heck of a nice guy.
Okay, sounds good. Another question, and this was earlier on when we were talking a little bit about disclosure and false images. Another listener, and I apologize to them for not getting to this, says, Peter, do you have any evidence of some of the sources that deliberately publish or post misinformation on this whole UFO subject and phenomena that try to, I think what he's saying is go out and actually cause problems?
Well, that's a great question. I would say my new book hones in on an individual who has knowingly put forward information that is false, and there is discussion and reflection around the various reasons that he may have done this. But otherwise, no. For me, it's any number of freelance goofballs or jerks or lonely people that have maybe nothing better to do than put something together that will fool somebody else. I think it's related to the mindset of people who create viruses, but not quite as destructive, to take the time to have fun at the expense of other people, in one sense, or to try to embarrass somebody in saying, yes, that looks real, and then, ha-ha, no, it proves it's not real, you are wrong, and by implication, perhaps the phenomena is nonsense. I don't really get it. I guess a mental health professional could give a thoughtful analysis of people that do these things, but no, it's I don't see it as any grand conspiracy either. It's just folks fooling other folks.
I totally agree. One more time, your book, the new book, the name and where they can get it?
Yeah, that is Halt in Woodbridge, available for $14.99 or 95 cents. I forget the big numbers there. From Amazon.com, and in Kindle edition for $3.99, or the equivalent in the UK or euros if you're listening overseas.
And one last thing with a minute to go, any events coming up? Of course, you've got the Travis Walton event, but anything in 2016, some places you're going to be?
Yeah, a bunch of them starting to fill in now, and other ones to be confirmed. A week from tonight at the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York City. In April, coming up at the Fringe, New Jersey conference. That will be in, I believe, in Bordentown or Hamilton Township. May, I have coming up, along with a great complement of speakers, the Paradigm Symposium in Minnesota. And in June, I'll be speaking for Ohio MUFON. June also at the Glasgow, Scotland Paranormal Festival, and other dates starting to firm up as we speak.
Well, and we're doing an event here in Utah, which I think Erica's going to talk about. Maybe we would even see you here in August.
I would hope so. Put in a good word for me with Erica in the next segment of the show, and who knows?
I surely
Maybe
will.
We can
I don't think you need to do that.
Oh, damn, she's listening.
Yeah,
oh, well.
She's still here.
Oh, well, do your best.
Sounds great. Peter, again, it's an honor as always. We'll stay in touch with you, and would love to catch up a little later in the year. Have a great 2016, and take care, and let's do it again.
Pat, thank you so much for a wonderful interview. All the best to you and your listeners, and I know the second half of the show is going to be really worth listening to.